After months of exhausting competition, elimination tears, and fan wars that exploded the internet, Boys Planet 2 has finally come to an end, leaving everyone desperately hoping they'll never have to sit through another survival show again. Mnet decided to debut the winning contestants as part of Alpha Drive 1, but instead of celebrating their victory, the group has been drowning in controversy since day one, with fans already questioning how long they'll last before inevitable disbandment. For those who didn't keep up with Boys Planet 2, here's a quick recap. The series premiered on July 17th with 160 contestants, making it the largest survival show in Mnet's history, all fighting tooth and nail to make it to the top 16 and eventually secure a spot in the final debut lineup. After watching millions of viewers get emotionally invested in their favorites, only to see them get eliminated in extremely dramatic fashion, the show wrapped up with 8 lucky winners who were chosen to become Alpha Drive 1, or ALD1 for short, a group name that honestly sounds more like a software update than an actual K-pop act, but somehow fits the planet theme format they were going for. According to Mnet's almost poetic explanation, the name signifies one official team united by the passion and drive to be number one, apparently embodying the spirit of the K-pop drive, which is a lot of fancy words to say they picked 8 contestants and gave them a name that nobody can say out loud without cringing a little bit. The final lineup includes Lee Sangwon, Zhou An Xin, Xin Long, Kim Geonwoo, Zhang Jia Hao, Leo, Chung Sanghyeon, and Kim Junseo listed in their ranking order. They made their first official appearance together by posting a social media video thanking their fans. The first thing fans had to say about this freshly debuted group wasn't congratulations or excitement about upcoming music, but rather complete bewilderment and secondhand embarrassment over their questionable group name. Boys Planet 2 sparked massive criticism with the announcement of Alpha Drive 1, and honestly, after years of questionable naming choices from Mnet survival shows, including names like Kepler and Zero Base 1 that left fans scratching their heads, you'd think the network would have learned its lesson about the importance of picking names that don't immediately become memes. Before the finale even aired, there were already jokes circulating on social media that the group's name was a little too similar to the popular grocery store chain Aldi. The motion logo that was shared following the announcement only seemed to make things worse, because now fans had visual confirmation that this wasn't some elaborate prank and that 8 talented guys were actually going to have to spend the next few years introducing themselves with a name that makes people think of weekly grocery shopping. Things only went further downhill after the show's finale was aired, because Mnet decided to drag the group into a scandal involving blatant plagiarism accusations. The chaos erupted when viewers noticed that the intro for Brat Attitude during the finale was eerily similar to ATEEZ's previous MMA performance concept. It was specifically about the use of wanted posters that looked almost identical to what the group had used in their own stage design. Netizens began doing side-by-side comparisons and realized that it wasn't just the poster designs that had been copied, but that the entire intro seemed to give off the same vibe as ATEEZ's concept. These suspicions were confirmed when the actual designer who had worked on ATEEZ's graffiti concept stepped forward to publicly call out the plagiarism, stating bluntly that the use of the work was not allowed and that what Boys Planet 2 had done was straight-up theft. As if the competition wasn't being criticized enough already, it didn't take long for the newly debuted members to find themselves in hot water over their alleged bad behavior towards a fellow trainee who didn't make the final cut. On September 25th, after the show's emotional finale, a clip went viral on social media that had fans absolutely furious about what they perceived as incredibly insensitive behavior from some of the winning contestants. The video in question showed some members doing what appeared to be a dance move from their earlier Chains team performance. This team originally consisted of Jun Lee Jong, Kim Geonwoo, Leo, Lee Sangwon, Zhang Jia Hao, and Zhou An Xin. The problem was that of all the Chains team members who made it to the finale, only Jun Lee Jong didn't secure a spot in the top 8 for debut, and the timing of the other members dancing their signature choreography while he was sitting right there seemed incredibly tone-deaf. When the camera shifted to show Lee Jong's reaction, viewers could see him putting his head down in what looked like a mixture of disappointment and embarrassment, which only made the situation more awkward. As a result of this, netizens called the debuted members arrogant jerks who clearly had no empathy or basic human decency, pointing out that Lee Jong had practiced and worked the hardest throughout the competition, only to watch his former teammates celebrate their success in front of his face. Some fans were so pressed by this that they announced they wished the group would disband already. The criticism was so harsh because netizens felt like the winners were rubbing salt in the wounds of someone who had given everything to the competition and came so close to achieving his dreams, only to have it all fall apart at the last moment. However, not everyone was convinced that the situation was as malicious as it appeared, with some fans arguing that people were being overly dramatic and reading too much into what was probably just an innocent celebration from excited trainees who had just achieved their biggest dream. Although Alpha Drive 1 became the most fan-voted group in Mnet's history, it seems like not everyone is a fan of the final final lineup for several reasons. The first major issue was that the final lineup caught many people completely off guard, with some seriously talented trainees who had dominated fan polls throughout the entire season somehow failing to secure a debut spot, leaving viewers wondering how their favorites could have made it so far only to be eliminated at the very last moment. One of the most shocking eliminations was Yoo Kangmin from VERIVERY, whose sudden departure from the competition had fans questioning whether the voting system was rigged. But the real drama started when Knets began analyzing the final lineup and realized that half of Alpha Drive 1 consists of foreign members, including 3 Chinese trainees and 1 Australian, which immediately started heated discussions about the group's composition and whether this was what Korean audiences actually wanted from a survival show that was supposed to represent K-pop. However, there seemed to be one silver lining for Korean fans, and that was the fact that Lee Sangwon, a Korean trainee, had secured the #1 spot in the final ranking, with many expressing relief that at least the top position went to someone from their own country. But even Lee Sangwon's victory as the #1 pick hasn't been without its fair share of controversy, because it turns out that not everyone is convinced he actually deserved the top spot, with some viewers even going as far as calling him the worst center in Produce history. The backlash against Sangwon has been absolutely brutal, with netizens tearing apart everything from his vocal abilities to his stage presence, claiming he can't sing, is mediocre at dancing, and comes across as performative rather than genuinely talented. Many netizens are convinced that Sangwon received favoritism from the show's producers, with fans arguing that he got the main character edit in every single team he was placed in and received what they're calling the most shameless push of any trainee in the entire history of the series, which is saying something considering Mnet's long track record of controversial editing and alleged manipulation. The accusations have gotten so serious that viewers are now joking about a potential rigging scandal, with many pointing to an eliminated trainee's previous claim that staff members were literally following Sangwon around and fangirling over him during filming, which painted a picture of behind-the-scenes bias that could have influenced the final results. If you look at the bigger picture though, Sangwon's ranking as #1 is the least problematic thing about the lineup, because when you start digging into the backgrounds of some other members, it becomes pretty clear why netizens are predicting that Alpha Drive 1 will flop quickly. The most obvious example of someone with a troubling past is Leo, whose inclusion in the final lineup has left many people absolutely baffled and questioning whether the network has any standards whatsoever when it comes to the character of their contestants. Leo was previously part of HYBE's highly anticipated pre-debut group called Trainee A, which was seen as the company's next major hit until everything completely fell apart when disturbing details about Leo's past came to light. Things took a dramatic turn when netizens discovered rap lyrics that Leo had written in the past, which contained violent and degrading references to women, using language that treated them as disposable objects and included disturbing lines about harming them. Netizens believed these weren't just edgy teenage attempts at being provocative, but genuinely concerning expressions that suggested he has deeply problematic views about women and violence. The content was so disturbing that it immediately raised serious questions about whether someone capable of writing such things should be anywhere near the entertainment industry. When the backlash hit, Leo's response was almost as infuriating as the original content, because instead of taking full responsibility or showing a genuine understanding of why his words were harmful, he essentially tried to brush it off by asking fans not to mind the lyrics too much and explaining that he had written them during a period when he was feeling angry. This clarification only made things worse because it suggested that Leo thought being in a bad mood somehow justified creating content that glorified violence against women. What made his situation completely indefensible was the fact that he was already 19 years old when this scandal became public, making him more than mature enough to understand the difference between right and wrong. Not to mention that his Australian background meant there was absolutely no possibility of translation errors or cultural misunderstanding, since English is his native language, and he had written these lyrics with full knowledge of what they meant. Eventually, Leo dropped out of Trainee A and the group disbanded, likely due to this scandal. But apparently losing his spot in a HYBE project and being responsible for an entire group's disbandment wasn't enough of a consequence to keep Leo from pursuing his idol dreams, because somehow he managed to secure a place on Boys Planet 2 and work his way through the competition to earn a spot in the final debut lineup. The fact that Mnet was willing to give him another platform despite his documented history of creating violent content about women didn't sit right with a lot of fans. A similar sentiment was felt when Kim Geonwoo was announced as a member of the final lineup, since he too has a huge scandal under his belt. The controversy surrounding Geonwoo broke out earlier in the season when an anonymous netizen stepped forward with serious accusations about his behavior during his time as a trainee at what they referred to as Company B, painting a picture of someone who had allegedly used his position and connections to make other trainees' lives absolutely miserable. According to this user, Geonwoo had earned the nickname the King of Company B due to his supposed special special treatment that came from having ties with 2 employees from the rookie development team, essentially giving him insider connections that allowed him to do whatever he wanted while other trainees suffered the consequences. The accuser claimed that Geonwoo had systemically mistreated fellow trainees using his influence and privileged position, allegedly pushing some of his victims to seek professional treatment for depression and anxiety as a direct result of his harmful behavior. The accusations put him in a seriously bad light, essentially portraying him as someone who had created such a toxic environment that other people's mental health had been seriously damaged, which is exactly the kind of behavior that should immediately disqualify someone from participating in any competition where they'd be working closely with other vulnerable trainees. When the pressure became too much to ignore, Geonwoo eventually issued a handwritten apology through his official channels, acknowledging that he had caused pain and hardship to others during his time as a trainee and admitting that his behavior as a leader had been immature and harmful. In his statement, he tried to frame his actions as the result of being under pressure and feeling the responsibility to perform well, suggesting that his poor leadership skills had led to him hurting several people, though he also claimed that some parts of the allegations were distorted or untrue. While he expressed regret and promised to use the incident as a learning experience to grow into a better person, his apology came across as carefully calculated damage control rather than genuine remorse, especially since he refused to address the specific details of what he had allegedly done or take full responsibility for the severity of his actions. Fans were absolutely not having it and immediately called out what they saw as a weak and self-serving response that prioritized saving face over actually taking accountability for his alleged victim's suffering. Viewers of the competition were calling for his removal from the show, but Mnet chose to let him stay, even allowing him to debut, once again proving that the network cares more about ratings and controversy than actually protecting the well-being of the people involved in their shows. Let us know what you think about Alpha Drive 1 in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, bye!